So Piers Morgan of Piers Morgan Uncensored had the likes of an Iranian lawyer on his podcast. It seems like whenever Piers decides to have an actual expert on his program that happens to be female, he oftentimes pairs that actual expert with the likes of a dingbat known as Dave Smith. And that's exactly what he did this time around. So he paired the Iranian lawyer, Elika Lebon, who is brilliant, by the way. She's a very intellectual woman. He paired her with Dave Smith yet again. And how do you think the conversation went? Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen the Natasha Hertsdorf interview that took place, which again involved the likes of Dave Smith and Piers Morgan being an absolute ass during the entire conversation, and then also recently Piers Morgan bumped into Natasha Hertsdorf at a party and basically was on borderline harassment with Natasha because she didn't want anything to do with him. Why would you? Just a bit creepy if you ask me. But anyway, Elika tried to lay out some very important truths about the Iranian-Israel conflict, as well as the conflict involving the terrorist organization in Gaza at the moment and what Israel is doing over there. And well, once again, when you try and pair intellectual points with emotion, guaranteed the emotion at the moment is more than likely going to take over, because the emotional person that can't think rationally about a situation doesn't understand the intellectual point. When you have an intellectual point and the emotion is just overwhelming and you make an emotional point, which one do you think is going to actually win? Guaranteed all the time, the person that's emotional, they will think that they're the winner. But the actual intellectual person that's making an intellectual point, they're in fact the real winner. Have a watch of this particular moment with Elika and Dave Smith. It's good. Have a watch.
Well, unless I'm wrong, you've just said that some of the things Israel's been doing are evil, right? You've drawn your own moral equivalency. You said both sides are doing... Well, hang on. Both sides are doing evil things. That's surely the point Dave Smith was making.
No, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why it's different. Because there is one side that kills ideology to protect its people, and there is one side that kills people to protect its ideology. That is the difference. I'm going to give you an example so you understand the nuance of what I'm trying to say. Let's say that there's a room of 100 people, okay? And in that 100 people, you're told that 10 of these people want to kill your people. Now, if you were to shoot and kill everyone in that room, that is objectively immoral and wrong. Objectively, right? But you are doing it out of protection. It's still disgusting and abhorrent and wrong. Now, let's say at the same time, you know that 10 people in that room of innocent civilians are against your ideology, and you murder the entire room to protect your ideology. Both actions are equally immoral and evil as each other, but the motivation is completely different, and you cannot make equivalencies of those motivations.
All right, Dave?
But you, in your own words, you just said that both actions are equally immoral. I mean, this just, it sounds, right. Okay. It sounds a lot like kind of the rationalization that your first guest was saying there, Pierce, that like, well, you know, everybody serves in the IDF in Israel, and therefore we really just got to go after everybody because you never know who here might be one of our oppressors or something like that. It's all just ridiculous logic. And look, there's the what is the intention of an ethnic cleansing campaign? Is that an unintended consequence as Israel is floating this out? Huh?
It's not an ethnic cleansing campaign. This is you just regurgitating buzzwords. But I clearly said that
hold on. Listen, this is what just so wait. No, I'm not regurgitating buzzwords. I'm talking about what one of the most powerful people at the absolute top of the Israeli government, their finance minister, said. Look, the people, the Palestinians in Gaza in the West Bank are there largely because they were ethnically cleansed out of where they were living for generations before that. So no, I'm sorry. It's just what's ridiculous. What are you talking about? Ethnic cleanse? You're talking
about the Nakba?
Yes.
Now that point, the very point that she made, one side kills ideology to protect its people, being Israel, and one side kills people to protect its ideology, being the terrorist organization. brilliant analogy. Both things are bad, but one is less bad in terms of the context, in terms of why you're doing it, and the other side is just pure evil. So both are bad. One is actually worse than the other. But that point that Elika was making went completely over Piers Morgan and Dave Smith's head, because that is an intellectual argument. They're going, but they're both the same thing. They can't understand. It just is not computing in their brain what she's trying to say. You've got one side where their ideology is far more important than the lives of other people. So they will knock out as many people as they possibly can to protect their ideology. The other side will take out people, or take out the ideology, I should say, and try to protect the people. But unfortunately, the other side that is using those people as human shields, it becomes even harder for the other side that's trying to protect its people and kill the ideology. It becomes very, very tricky, doesn't it? But to someone that has a very low IQ by the looks of things, like Dave Smith and Piers Morgan, you could see Dave Smith's brain trying to make sense of this. He's like, what in the world is she on about? And his response exemplified just that. Notice the deflection. Notice how he just basically repeated what she said. He goes, but you just said that both things are bad. Of course she said that, because yes, when you're looking at the entire situation, any loss of life is bad, objectively speaking. And we should try and protect innocent life, right? But when you've got an organization that does not care about innocent life, what do? What are you supposed to do to protect your ideology, to protect your people, and to destroy this ideology that doesn't want you to exist? What do? You always hear these people go after the ones that are trying to rationalize and make sense of this this concept, right? This moral equivalence of doing the right thing, trying to wipe out the ideology itself, because the ideology will dictate what people do, right? And so this ideology that Hamas is a part of, a terrorist organization to wipe out all Israelis, what is Israel supposed to do? Just allow Hamas to do whatever it wants with the hostages, to use the Palestinian people as their human shields? One is using a very difficult method of warfare. The other is not. The other is trying its very best. It's very difficult what they're doing, and they're going to cop a lot of flack for it. But it doesn't help when you have an intellectual woman that is trying to explain this stuff. I can only imagine what would have been like in World War II. They would have had probably the same problem. You have innocent Germans, and the Nazis basically did not care about the innocent Germans. They only cared about their agenda. And when Churchill was like, okay, let's bomb Germany, let's blow like some of the cities into smithereens, do you not think he would have gone, well, this is absolutely horrible. We're taking the lives of innocent Germans, which there were innocent Germans. But in order to wipe out the Nazis, unfortunately, the reality of war, which is a horrible thing, is unfortunately casualties are going to mount up in the sense of innocent lives. It does not mean that you stop trying to defend your people. It means you wipe out the ideology. That's the right course of action. But these dingbats don't understand it, except for Elika. And I'll point this out. She actually realized this herself. It's pointless to argue with these low IQ imbeciles. Let me tell you why I decided that yesterday's appearance on Piers Morgan alongside Dave Smith would be my last. First, I had spent the past couple of months being so emotionally exhausted and above that, genuinely devastated by Dave Smith's online rhetoric. It's hard to describe how much his words have hurt me alongside millions of Iranians and millions of Jews and Middle Eastern people. He doesn't care about any of that. Why would he? He's living safely and securely in his own luxurious home. He repeatedly downplayed the brutality and threat of the Islamic regime in Iran, insisting over and over again, Iran, the regime, is not the threat, and the US government is the threat, or more, Israel is the threat too. The overwhelming majority of 90 million Iranians know this line very well. It is the same propaganda of anti-Western imperialism used as a red herring that convicted them to take to the streets in 79 and bring in the Ayatollahs. Following that mistake, they realized this line, this rhetoric, this propaganda was complicit in one of the biggest heists of our time. The past 45 years, Iranian intellectuals, like she is one, Dave Smith is not, neither is Piers Morgan, both inside and outside of Iran, have exhausted themselves to try and demonstrate to the world how this type of commentary is not just a red herring, but it leads to the collapse of society. Again, you can point out what Douglas Murray was saying as well. As it did for us, imagine how exhausting and painful it is to try and explain the contours of this to the world, only to have people who discovered the Middle East yesterday insist we don't understand it. Yes, I can understand completely, Elika. I totally understand. Even though I'm not in the Middle East, I can understand how tiresome it gets. I'm trying to understand how these dingbats think, to be honest. And when I say dingbats, I'm talking about Douglas and Dave Smith and a vast majority of others as well. It is intellectually lazy, is what it is. Not just that, they're acting stupid. And it's annoying because they don't understand how dangerous their rhetoric is. They keep feeding propagandist lies. And that's concerning. After October 7th, not just Dave Smith, but many Westerners who had familiarity with the reality of this type of propaganda were thrust to the spotlight by regulating these same appealing lies, having no idea who manufactured this rhetoric and to what end. I have an idea who manufactured it, to be honest. Societies who have been touched by the finger of death, be it under socialist utopias or terrorist domination, Iranians, Israelis, Jews, Venezuelans, Cubans, Yemenis, Afghans, Syrians, Iraqis, Lebanese, Russians, Chinese, and even Gazans and more understand where these talking points begin and end. That considered, what the post-October 7th discourse has revealed is much of the untouched Western world has become so indoctrinated by the disinformation of these bad actors. She's using a phrase that I use quite often. The bad faith actors who they can't even begin to understand the inner workings of that conversation become futile. These conversations become more about winning to those whose only investment is being right. Narcissistic psychopaths and very emotional at that, which inevitably means losing for those whose investment is survival. So when Piers' team reached out to me to ask to join the conversation, I'll admit that I did actually ask to debate Dave Smith. The thing is, though, a part of me inside was screaming, don't do it. This man is not here to listen to you. He is here to talk over you. He's not here to understand Iran and the sentiments of millions. Dear, oh dear. And the sentiments of millions of Iranians who do not support his advocacy for diplomacy deals that have proved fatal to them quite literally by enriching the machinery used to massacre them, but to insist that his out-of-touch perspective of Iran without knowing any iota of the long history that has brought us here from the Iranian perspective is truth. The whole anti-war line has been used by regime lobbyists for decades, the same one Dave Smith insists on now. Even court documents reveal correspondence between the regime and its US-based lobbyists in pushing this coordinated propaganda effort, which they admitted to intentionally aiming at naive Western anti-war activists as their easiest targets. Yes, let's go after the dingbats that have a very loud voice. Let's go after them. To induce diplomacy deals that line their coffers with hundreds of billions. The only true anti-war perspective is the one of millions of Iranians who have for decades asked not to platform this regime to the point of inevitable military confrontation. But how could outsiders who aren't listening know this? I'll be honest, as soon as the conversation began, I already knew I was already defeated. As soon as the opening line was Piers reciting how much I think Dave Smith's talking points are garbage, I do, but that's obviously not how to start a fruitful conversation. That's how you egg on a cat. Dear oh dear. I knew I would be taunted, pushed, and agitated, not just because I have contended with somebody who possesses an illicit amount of confidence and arrogance despite standing on the outside of collective sentiment, but because the conversation was clearly never intended to bring him nor the world closer to the truth. This is why you should always listen to your gut instinct, and I'm disappointed in myself that I failed my instinct on this occasion. At this point, coming closer to the truth will not happen through debates. Why? Because it isn't facts people don't have. It's context. Underneath a thin layer of easily accessible facts, there exists means or exists oceans of context that escape people who have never swam in our waters. Dave Smith will never, not for as long as he lives, know how much he has hurt us. These conversations will never bring the world closer to truth. Truth will come to light as it always does, but it will happen not by attacking the darkness, but through shining the light. Eventually, enough people will shine the light of truth until every corner of darkness is dispelled. I agree. So even though I won't be engaging in these reality TV style debates, I will continue speaking where people are interested in listening and that have a chance of moving the needle close to the truth. Until then, we may continue to face the abuse, attacks, hate, and ostracization from the masses lingering in the dark. But in the words of Ricky Gervais, your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer. That is some powerful words by Elika Lebon. Now, she's an attorney, she's a speaker and author to be. And I think what she said was brilliant. So get amongst Elika if you can. And Elika, if you're watching this, would love to have a conversation with you and love to actually properly talk about the realities of what's really going on to spread the truth, because that's what's important. Anyway, that's enough from me, but you guys take care, be blessed, and I'll see you all in the next video.